Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the Connected Wellness Podcast. I'm Rachel Ann. I'm here with the lovely Marianne, and we are so passionate about wellness.
Here in this podcast, we look at the ways our physical, emotional, and spiritual health is all connected and how we can take better care of our whole selves holistically so we can live our best lives. We're really excited that you're here with us on the journey. Welcome to
Yes.
episode 51 of the podcast.
Yes, 51. Oh my goodness gracious. Wow. Ah, we have come a long way. Connected
We have come a
wellness.
long way. It's just about 2 years. So,
Wow.
I think probably the end of this year will be like 2 years. So I think it's been great. I think it's been a fun
Yeah.
2 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. Thanks for being along for the ride, y'all. We appreciate you.
Absolutely. Yes. All right. So today we have a good topic. It's something that
Mhm.
we allude to very often, I think, in some
Mm,
of our episodes. And we realized, hey, we've never had a whole episode about mindfulness.
mhm.
And this honestly might be good timing, with the holidays coming up and the new year coming up, and people kind of thinking about goals and sometimes getting overwhelmed with things. I think mindfulness is a good tool to have, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. Mindfulness is always the answer, y'all. I love
Mm.
mindfulness. Spoiler alert. My clients know I love mindfulness. It's always their homework. So I'm excited that we get to talk about it. And especially right now, as we're, dealing with post-election stress, we're
Mhm.
entering holiday stress, New Year stress. A lot of stresses are overlapping right now. So it is a
Yeah.
great time to practice mindfulness.
Yeah. I think there's no wrong time to practice mindfulness,
Oh,
but
so
this
true.
might be a good time to start, right? If it's something
Yeah.
that you're not accustomed to or to think about. Yeah. All right,
Yeah.
let's start with wins. You want to
Cool.
share your wellness win first, or you want me to go?
Yeah, I could go first. So today, the day that we are recording this, is me and my husband's 3-year anniversary. Oh, it is so fun. It is so, so fun. I I'm very happy to say that I am somebody who was a bride and I completely enjoyed my wedding day. Like I had the best time
Mm,
ever. And I'm trying to convince Brandon to do like a vow renewal just like every year because I just want to like party and hang out and just tell
hmm.
everybody how awesome and how much I love him. But those things are very expensive. So until then, I will just scream it on the rooftops, including on this podcast. And it's been really cool just to like think about it. And we like to think about it in terms of the numbers of years we've been married in relation to a human. So we've been married for 3 years. How would we treat a 3-year-old? And we kind of give
Hmm.
ourselves that same like love and truth and grace. So
Yeah.
I'm like, Brandon, we're like a toddler today, and this is when we're like walking a little bit more and saying things. I don't have kids, so I don't know what else happens when they turn 3. But, a lot of things. They're eating different foods now. I don't know if they're chewing. But it's exciting.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure there's like a good amount of teeth in there by 3.
Yeah?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think so. As another childless person, but by
The
my guess is
two
there's
childless
I
people are
know there's a good
guessing.
amount of teeth in there. But you know what? I think we can assume, even if we don't know exact 3-year-olds, is that this is a time of like learning every day,
Hmm.
right? Like processing more than you were before,
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, it's a very exciting time of growth,
Yeah, it
I think.
is.
So yeah, congratulations. That's really
Thank
exciting.
you. Thank you.
So in on that note, Chris and I are an adult. This year we became an adult, 18 years. Yeah.
Yeah, congratulations, you're an adult.
Thank
You're
you.
supposed to
Yeah.
have so much
So
figured out by now, which is very real. When I was 18, I was like, oh, I have nothing figured out. So,
yeah. And especially looking back, like maybe when you're 18, you think you know everything, but looking
mm,
back, you're like, oh, I knew nothing.
yeah,
So I think that, yes, we may be an adult, but we do realize there's a lot more to learn, a lot more growth, but a
yeah,
lot of experience as well. But I like that analogy. I think that's cute.
yeah. I love that. Well,
Yeah.
welcome to
Yeah.
adulthood. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for ushering us toddlers into marriage. And Marion
Yeah.
and Chris, for those who don't know, they are like one of our favorite couples, and we appreciate them. And there's a lot about Marion and Chris that Brandon and I appreciate, and we're like, oh, these are characteristics that we also want to have in our marriage. So for those of you that know Marion and Chris, you know how incredible they are. And if you've ever been blessed by them, tell them in the comments. Welcome them to adulthood. But
Well,
yeah.
that was a few months ago, but thank you. Yes, this year was adulthood for us. I love that. All right. So my wellness win is that in the last few days, I really noticed, and I think might be kind of related to my last one. I think in my last one, in the last episode, I said like really paying attention to the times I feel well, as I've been
Mm,
struggling with some health issues. So in this particular last few days, I noticed times where it was so clear that God was helping me, like with
mm,
even with like little small things, and it was just like this could not have worked out more easily. And it was a few days that were very, very busy, filled with like service projects and things going on with the church,
mm,
and so many things just worked out so much better than I thought they would, and so much more easily than I thought they would. And that hit me so clearly, like this is God. This is
mm.
God saying, like, you're working and I'm supporting you, right? And I'm
Yeah.
going to make this easier for you and that easier for you. And even to the point of like something so little, like I had to tape something as I was working on this one particular project, and I was running out of tape, and I had a few more things left to tape, and I was like, oh no. And I wasn't at home, I was at
Yeah.
church, and I was like, if I run out of tape, I don't know if there's any tape in the church, and am I going to
Mm,
have to run across the street to Rite Aid? Like, I just want to
mm,
finish what I'm doing so I can move on to the next thing. And so I started to be a little bit more careful with the tape, and literally the last bit of tape hit the last thing that I needed to tape. And like I know that's so little, but when
mm,
I like stressed about 12 different things and all of it, I'm trying to do my best, for the
mm.
service of God. Like that felt like so clearly. You might roll your eyes and be like, "You're ridiculous," but not you, Rachel. But maybe
Yeah.
someone else might be
Yeah.
like, "That's ridiculous." But for me, I was like, "That's God." God was like,
Yeah.
"Nope, I
Yeah.
got you. Like this tiny little thing, like you don't need to worry about that. I got you."
Yep.
Right. And so that last piece of tape hit that last thing, and I was just like, "God, thank you."
Oh, that's
Like for that. And so like a
beautiful.
few things happened like that, and it was very,
Mm,
like invigorating for my faith, very
mm.
comforting, because yeah, it was just like like I said, a busy few days. And I've had a rough 5 weeks now
Oh,
going on it.
5 weeks.
So
Y'all
I
pray for
think,
Marianne.
yeah, yeah, and there are so many people praying, and I know, and
Mm,
I feel that. But that was nice. So that was nice.
yeah.
And you know what I like about that win for today's episode is I think if I was not paying attention, right? If I was not being mindful, these little things could pass me by that I don't pay attention to,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't have the impact to really, make a big difference. And this was days
Yeah.
ago, and I'm still thinking about it, and my heart is still warmed by it, by feeling
Wow.
God's presence in sometimes these very little things. So that's
Yeah.
why I think one of the reasons mindfulness is so important.
Yeah. Oh, number one, that is a beautiful example. I think I love that example so much because it really shows that God knows us. He knows us so well. And he's like, I know that what you need in this moment and really what's going to transform it is just this tiny little thing.
Yeah.
That's it. And it's a beautiful way because God speaks to us and does things in big ways and in small ways. He is a God of the macro and the micro. And so
Yeah.
I think that is just like a beautiful example of that, Marianne.
Yeah.
And also definitely of mindfulness too, which we'll get to in a second. It just that ties in so beautifully. And I'm glad that you were able to give yourself the time to appreciate and acknowledge
Yeah.
and notice instead of being like just rushing past to be like, okay, I didn't have to
Right.
go to Rite Aid. Okay, on to the
Yeah.
next thing. It was like, man, God, like, thank you. Thank
All
you.
right. You know
Oh,
what's actually funny about it is I was like sitting by myself on the side, and I may have laughed out loud. I definitely was smiling really big as I got that last piece of tape. And I was like, if anyone's looking at me, they're going to be like, is she okay? Because I like sitting there by myself, like laughing. But
Yeah.
that's how impactful it was, like,
Oh,
and
wow.
I guess sometimes when you just need to feel God's presence,
Mm,
and that's where I've been at lately, then, any little bit can mean a lot,
yeah.
so yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that is so beautiful. Amen. Yay, wellness wins. Yay to
Yay,
God
wellness
doing
wins.
wonderful
Yes.
things in our lives. Mm,
And I think this is a side note, but I think he's always doing things. He's
mm,
always working for us and helping us
amen.
and giving us grace and provision. We just are not always paying close enough attention, So
Yeah,
yeah.
I
Yeah.
agree. And also there's stuff that he's doing that we just don't know about because we're humans and he's God. So that's also like
Right.
very real. It's just
Right.
we're about to get into a whole other episode topic, but
Yeah.
it's just trusting him and being like, "Oh Lord, you are always working something out. And if I can't see it now, I'll be able to see it someday soon." And just
Yeah.
trusting in his character and his power and his love.
And thank you. Like I don't know what
Mm,
you're doing, but I know you're working, so thank you. Yeah.
yep. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay,
Mhm.
we'll get back to the topic. We will mindfully redirect here our
That
conversation
was such a good
back
segue.
to the
Nice.
topic. So okay, you said you love mindfulness. Can you tell us very briefly what it is and why you love it?
Yes, mindfulness is amazing. So, mindfulness is basically when you are intentionally focusing on a thing or activity. So, some common things are mindful thinking, mindful feeling, mindful eating. So, while you're engaging in that activity, you're doing it with a lot of intentionality. You're focusing, you are not distracted, you are going at a pace that allows you to like fully absorb what is happening. So, an
Yeah.
example that we use a lot, mindful eating. Mindful eating, it would be asking yourself questions about the flavors, seeing how your body is feeling when you are eating this type of food,
Hmm.
noticing if you're full or not, noticing if you need some water, some type of hydration. And so when we do those things, we're able to uncover what the needs are of our body, of that moment, or whatever that thing is, and then we're able to appropriately respond for that.
Yeah.
And that's why I love it so much. I think it's, especially as Christians, it's a beautiful way for us to steward the things that the Lord has given us,
Mm.
including our mind, our bodies, our souls, our finances, our relationships, all of that. Um,
Yeah.
and it really is so powerful. When we grasp mindfulness, we not only are strengthening our relationship with God, we're also seeing how our relationship with God impacts the way that we show up in different areas of our life. So, not being as anxious, not having a
Hmm.
reactive presence. Because when we practice mindfulness, it's kind of like there's like a step in between like the action and your
Yeah.
thought. So you get to actually take a moment and recognize what's going on and what you want to do about it, as opposed to just zipping through to anger or sadness or whatever it is. You're
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
gonna feel it, but
Yeah.
there's a process of what's going on and why, and then the action, the feeling, all of that is the result. So I
Yeah.
I love it. It's transformative, and I don't say that dramatically. It is
Yeah.
literally transformative.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it does sound like it. So it sounds like that if we can learn to be mindful on a regular basis, we basically get to take ourselves off of autopilot, off of cruise
Hmm.
control. We are, living more intentionally,
Mm,
I think, and reacting. I love this idea of our reactions, reacting more
mm,
intentionally. So, um, let's think about, since we talked about marriage here, like couples, for example.
mm,
So don't couples, you may notice, have the same fight over and over and over again. It might be
mm.
something, is often very silly, right? We've talked about the example of socks on the floor. I can just use that again. So,
Yep.
the socks on the floor may cause us to get into a fight every single time, right?
Mm,
But if we use mindfulness, right? So say the trigger, I see the trigger, I see the socks on the floor. And if I'm not being mindful, I allow myself to react in the same automatic, conditioned way that I always react, which
mm-hmm.
is to get mad, to feel hurt, to feel like my feelings are neglected, and
Mm-hmm.
to, yell at Chris and to start a fight over and over and over again. But
Yeah.
if I react mindfully, then I kind of pause, I think about it, and I'm allowed, like you said, I'm allowed to be upset. I'm allowed to
Yeah.
be upset that the socks are on the floor, but it gives me this space between the thing that happened, the trigger, and my reaction. So it allows
Mm,
me to stop and think, hey, do I really want to start this fight for the 87th time? Right?
mm,
Or do I want to approach this a little bit differently? So I'm
mm-hmm,
mindfully thinking, hey, this is making me upset because I feel neglected, for example, right?
mm-hmm,
So instead of
mm-hmm,
just yelling, I could say, hey, can we talk about this? Like, I feel hurt because of XYZ. That's going to have a different response than if I just was like, I can't believe you did this again. You know, you're always
mm,
blah, blah, blah. And then, so that, like, again, that space, I think mindfulness is a lot about space, about pause,
mm-hmm,
allows us to have a different reaction, and that can help our relationships big time,
mm.
but also it can help just my mental health in general, because
Yep.
anxiety, for example, is having these same neural pathways that, when I have this trigger, right, I get worried about XYZ and I spiral and I spiral and I spiral, right? and
Mm,
and why does it happen so easily is because for some of us it's been happening for years and years and years, right? So
mm,
that neural connection, that neural pathway rather, is very embedded, it's very deep. But if I again pause before I start spiraling, right, I acknowledge I'm feeling worried about this, I'm feeling anxious about this, right, and then I kind of allow myself a choice.
mm,
Do I want to continue down this path, or do I want to, think about other ways of reacting? Which, that I think we need tools, so maybe you have, if you're working with a therapist or a professional, you can have tools that to redirect that right response.
mm,
And I think we've talked about that in our, I think we had a thoughts episode. But yeah,
mm,
I so that's what I'm most interested in with mindfulness, is this idea of stopping these conditioned habitual responses,
mm-hmm.
and reacting more intentionally to all kinds of stimuli.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's practicing mindfulness is very empowering for that reason that you mentioned. Instead of us responding from a place of what we've been conditioned to believe, maybe from our family, our friends, society that we live in, the workplaces we're in, whatever it is, we're responding in the ways that those people would or what's normal for them. We're actually responding in a way that's authentic for us, which
Hmm.
means that it will be healthier for us because I'm doing something that's actually based on me. I'm not doing it based on other people or what I've been told, XYZ type of thing. And so that's why it's empowering. That's why it builds a healthy relationship with yourself. You're saying,
Yeah.
oh, what's going on with me? I'm not forcing myself to be happy about something when I'm not. I'm not forcing myself to scream about something when I actually don't want to. I'm sad and I'm going to communicate that I'm sad. And this person, because they love me and they want to know about my feelings about their socks on the floor, they're going to listen and we're going to have a conversation about it. That's empowering, you
Yeah.
know. And so I think that is a beautiful gift that mindfulness gives us. And when we do that, we typically don't respond from a place of reaction. That's something super reactive, something that's hostile. Since we
Yeah.
had that moment to really ask ourselves what's going on, then what we notice and what we say are like, oh, my feelings are hurt, and that disarms the other person versus
Hmm.
now that
Yeah.
person is gonna like be defensive because you
Right.
you are verbally attacking them,
Right.
and we're not getting anywhere, girl. So I think that's the beauty of mindfulness. There's a sense of calm and intentionality. It doesn't wipe away the reality of the
Right.
situation. It actually allows you to sit in the reality of the situation and actually do something about it that is really, really healthy. So being present.
Yeah.
And it's also really hard. And we don't like that,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is why we don't
Yeah.
do it.
Especially being present with difficult emotions. So,
Yeah.
I mean, when I was thinking about this, the mindfulness helps us make good things better because we notice them,
Mm,
right? And we could talk about that in a minute. But also, like, we need to be mindful of negative emotions. So, I've heard
yes.
this before that, okay, when you have a negative emotion, anxious, sad, angry, whatever, any negative emotion that you can think of, most of us have the desire to push that emotion away,
Mhm.
right? We want to stifle it. Either we want to distract ourselves with something. That's probably the most common thing, so that I don't have to feel this negative emotion. But I have
Mm.
heard that that's not going to help you get through it, right? Because if
Yeah.
you stifle, 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 it's just going to come back like stronger, right? And so, versus if you have some sort of negative emotion, if I'm feeling anxious, if I'm feeling upset, if I'm feeling sad, if I'm feeling angry, then mindfulness tells us to acknowledge that. You know what? I'm
Mm.
feeling like really upset about this situation,
Mm.
and just sit there with that. I'm feeling upset about this. Almost like it's almost like if you can remove yourself a little bit and see the anger, see the sadness, see the anxiety, not like inside of me, but like it's just here, it's floating. The anger, I see it, I
Mm.
acknowledge it. I respect that, because like I'm allowed to have my feelings and there's a reason that I'm feeling this. And then again, allowing us to process that emotion. So I'm feeling
Mm.
angry. Why am I feeling angry? Well, this and this happened. Okay, is that really an attack on me? That
Mm.
again allows us to kind of back up and break down, why am I feeling that way, right? So do I
Mm.
need to be this angry, and how should I respond to this anger? So it gives
Mm.
us again space. Um, but I thought that was very interesting, that I am very guilty of, when I feel something I want that's bad, I want to just push it away. Push,
Mhm.
push, push,
Yeah.
push it away. If I'm going to distract myself with work, if I'm with a TV show, whatever it is, because I don't want to think about this negative emotion. But that's not helping me process it and move forward.
Yeah.
So true mindfulness means being mindful of the negative and the positive, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is a really good point. Um, Something that I've been trying to do is stay away from saying negative emotions or positive emotions, and instead just being like my emotions.
Yeah.
Because for those of us who are like a little bit more sensitive to words, not everybody's like this, but for those of us who maybe have grown up in environments where only positive emotions were allowed, right? And if you felt something negative like sadness, anger, you had to stuff it down. If I had $1 for every time I had a conversation, specifically with Christian women of color who are immigrants or children of immigrants, and they have said, I do not know how to feel angry or
Mm,
sad or frustrated or disappointed. I would be the richest person in the world, because there's just something about the intersectionality of those identities that make it difficult for us to be and show up authentically when we're experiencing something that's negative, right? And
mm,
so saying the negative emotions, all of that, I mean, anger is negative if I'm going to punch the wall, but anger is not negative if I'm responding to injustice and I'm going to
sure.
do something to care for my neighbor, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think that's also part of engaging in mindfulness, is saying like, let's just unlearn and take away terms that are actually not healthy and are actually not accurate of the
Mm,
experience. And instead being like, yeah, I feel this way. There is no morality assigned to this feeling or this
yeah. Yeah.
term. God didn't assign it, so why am I going to assign it?
Yeah.
Right? If
Yeah.
God did it, then I shouldn't either. And the idea of, okay, like I feel angry, and since there's no morality attached to it, then I don't feel as much temptation to like stuff it down. Or even people who maybe have issues with anger where they project it onto people, they go from 0 to 100 real quick. That is also a way that they are just trying to like get rid of anger. So we either
Hmm.
get rid of it inwardly by pressing it down and watching TV, overworking, stuff like that, or we want to get rid of it externally so that we don't have to deal with it by yelling at
Sure.
people,
Yeah.
punching a wall, things of that nature. The energy has to go somewhere, but it doesn't have to be a hostile or unhealthy way of expressing that. And so mindfulness allows us to really trust ourselves. It says, Rachel, I'll use Rachel as an example. I, Rachel, trust myself to deal with anger. So
Mhm.
that means that when I'm feeling angry at Brandon for leaving the socks on the floor for 3 years as of today, that means that I will show up and I will be like, hey, babe, I notice that you keep doing this. Let's talk about where this is coming
Mhm.
from. I feel disrespected by it. Do you feel rushed in the morning? Oh, you do. That's what, and so we can have a conversation about it that way. But it is hard. Feeling our feelings is so hard, y'all. It is like
Mhm.
so difficult. That's a whole other episode. Let us know below
Yeah.
if you are a pro at feeling your feelings. But it is really hard. So know
Yeah.
that we are not speaking from a place of like we know this perfectly. Even me, as
Mhm.
someone who's been doing this for 5 million years, it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's interesting that you said like taking away the morality from the emotions. And I do think that's a
Mm,
big part of mindfulness is lack of judgment. So allowing
mm,
yourself to feel whatever you feel, to experience whatever you're experiencing in that moment without judgment. Right? So,
mm,
I'm feeling mad. Okay. If I'm judging myself, then of course that's going to be a negative experience, right? You shouldn't be mad, and and then that's going to cause me to stifle it, right? But to just acknowledge it, right? And maybe be curious about it, right? So why
mm,
am I feeling like this? What can I do, perhaps to feel less angry, right? If that's not
mm-hmm.
serving me in the moment that I'm feeling angry. So yeah, I think that is interesting that if I'm passing immediate judgment on my feelings, which I don't know. I think we do that. I'm kind of hard on
Mm,
myself. So yeah, if
yeah,
I if
same.
I'm feeling something that I think is unpleasant, maybe that's a better word, it's an unpleasant emotion, then I am gonna be quick to kind of judge myself and be like, you shouldn't be feeling this way.
Yeah.
And again, that does not help me to move forward from there. But on the plus side,
Mm-hmm.
which we kind of mentioned at the beginning of the episode, is that I think, being mindful really helps us to increase enjoyment and
Mm,
pleasure, of everyday experiences. So some of the things I often hear about is having a mindful practice in the morning, of if you drink tea or coffee, of the
mm,
process of like making your coffee or your tea, which is something that a lot of people do every single day, right? That you can make that a mindfulness practice, that you can be in the moment, right? As opposed to answering an email while you're doing this, or looking at your schedule or whatever you might be
mm.
doing, is to really like pay attention to the water boiling,
Yeah.
smell the smell of the tea or the coffee, really savor that first sip. And in taking just a few moments to do that, like you're kind of grounding yourself, you're like, just putting yourself in this nice, calm state. And then
Mm,
you're really going to enjoy that cup of coffee or that cup of tea versus if I'm drinking it while I'm doing something else.
yeah.
So I think that's a beautiful thing about mindfulness is that, it can help us to deal with the more difficult things, if it allows us to take space and to pause, but it also can allow us to really take joy out of things that we may take for granted, you know?
I love those examples that you brought up because it like mindfulness is in the simple things that we do every day. It can be in the big things too, absolutely,
Yeah.
but it's in the like parts of our routine that we are commonly just like going fast. There's and I don't know if it's a trend anymore, but there was at one point this trend of like having like a soft morning or a slow morning, and it's this idea of just going through your morning rituals slowly, intentionally. As Christians, praying while we're doing these things, right? Yawning, all of those
Excuse
all
me.
of those things. Girl, yawn, be free. Don't keep that in. Let that out and be free. But the idea of like a soft, slow morning as like this is how I'm going to start my day. If I'm gonna do it really frazzled, then the rest of my day has the potential to be really frazzled. Then I'm
Yeah.
gonna be frazzled going into things versus if I'm being mindful when I'm making my coffee and I'm even praying while I'm doing that because I'm slowing down enough where I can actually pray, worship, listen to music, right? Read some Bible verses, things like that. It's a more like holistic, nice experience. And so that's something that I've been trying to do more as someone who's not a morning person. I've been trying to do that more. And it's actually been, I don't know, it's made me want to get out of bed earlier.
Hmm.
Um, which I typically don't because I love laying in bed and just it's just warm and snuggly, especially as it's getting cooler out, you know. But
Hmm.
slow mornings, it has been a really great way for me to practice mindfulness. Have you, this is off script, have you been practicing mindfulness in any way you can think of?
I think the most way that I actually do is like a gratitude practice, because I think that's a
Mm.
mindfulness practice, you know.
Hmm.
So thinking at the end of the day, hey, what am I thankful for? Um, I actually started using, oh, you didn't talk about it here. You talked about it in your de-stress workshop, the Lectio 365 app.
Ah, yes.
And one of the questions, that it asks you to consider in the nightly prayer devotional is like, where did you see God's goodness today? And
Mm,
so that,
wow.
yeah, that's kind of like my, think back. And then maybe that's why I was primed a couple days
Mm,
ago with the tape situation, to see this is God's goodness, right? Like
mm-hmm,
because I think about that at the end of the day when I use that app. And so that I think is what I'm best at actually doing, but I would like to get better at the reactions, you know what I mean?
mm, mm,
And obviously with my, anxiety problem um and stuff like that. But that's why I want to ask you actually. So
mm,
mindfulness for the big things is like it's big. When you're having like a strong emotion, it's kind of difficult to just like immediately be like, wait, hold up, like I need to stop here and be mindful. So I think it's something we have to build up to with
mm,
which is why it's called a mindfulness practice, right?
mm.
So, what are ways that we can incorporate mindfulness into our daily routine that will help us whenever we kind of need it for a bigger emotion?
That's a really good question. So there's typically two things that are really helpful when we are beginning to engage in mindfulness. Um, the first thing is that I recommend usually that people set their alarm 3 times during the day. And when your alarm goes off, let's say you do a morning, an afternoon, and then an evening. When your alarm goes off, you ask yourself 3 mindfulness questions. What's happening in my mind, meaning what are my thoughts, what are my feelings right now, and what's happening in my body. So, mind, right? We're thinking about our thoughts, feelings, we're thinking about our emotional health, and then body, we're thinking about our physical health. Do we have tension anywhere, right? Do we need to stretch things like that? And by asking yourself those questions, you're actually training your brain to think about itself. And
Hmm.
so, as you continue to practice that, what will then happen is you'll start to do it naturally where you won't need the alarms or you won't need the reminder. And you'll just naturally be like, oh, I'm noticing that after I eat this donut, my stomach feels really full, right? As opposed to you just going through and eating 3 donuts and you're not noticing what's happening in your body. I love donuts. And I
Hmm.
think that's why I mentioned this because I'm like, I want a donut right now. Um, and so that's a way to like introduce mindfulness. It's something that we
Hmm.
have to learn. It's new neural pathways that need to be created. That's like
Yeah.
one aspect of mindfulness, one easy way to begin it. A second really easy tip that I have around mindfulness is finding times in your day where it's actually easy to do it. So while you're brushing your teeth, you're typically not doing anything but brushing your teeth.
Right.
That can be an easy time to practice asking yourself those questions. Being like, oh, how do my teeth feel with this toothbrush? Is it soft? Oh, do I like this flavor of toothpaste? Wow, has it been long enough? Ooh, do I have a cavity here? So many things are happening, and it's a process that you're usually just doing that and nothing else, where you can easily practice that intentionally.
Yeah.
Starting off mindfulness for the first time ever being a New Yorker on the subway, that's a challenge, right? You will get there, but that can be a challenge as like the first
Hmm.
one. So finding easy, simple tasks that you normally participate in that you're only focusing on that thing. So it could be cooking, brushing your teeth, showering, even walking from one room to another, when you use your phone, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Finding those things and then practicing with that and getting like used to it, and then it'll then expand to other things.
Yeah. Yeah, I think paying attention to your senses is a
Mm,
big part of it. So I remember we talked about the grounding activity, I think with Dana when we talked about somatic therapy, of like, what are 5 things that you see and 4 things that you hear and 3 things that you touch. And so paying
Mhm.
attention to the senses. So that's a form of mindfulness. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. Yep. The five, four,
Yeah.
three, two, one method. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if that's another option for when we are kind of setting these reminders, like ask yourself the question or ask yourselves these things to just pay attention to your surroundings, because that's the goal, like to pay attention, so that when you need to, you can understand what you're feeling. What am I seeing or hearing that might
Mm-hmm.
be triggering this emotion in me, right? So again, it's
Mm-hmm.
just allowing us this curiosity so that we can maybe understand our reactions a little bit better and then
Mm-hmm.
react in a more healthy manner in the
Mm-hmm.
future. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a big part of it.
Mm.
um yeah, I like that. So this practice, is that your first mindfulness homework that you usually give, the 3 times a day, the three
I do.
questions? I like it. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
easy to remember, easy to implement. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think that's good. And then the just like you said, it is neural pathways, so the better you get at it, the easier it becomes, and it's like a skill that you can draw upon when you need it,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. We should be the neural pathway podcast.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah.
51 episodes in, we're gonna change our name here.
Rebrand. We're actually neural pathways. But yeah. And then I think the thing with the alarms going off and you asking yourself those questions, you're not doing like a deep dive. The goal is just to build awareness. That's the
Mm-hmm.
goal. So with
Mm-hmm.
mindfulness, you're building awareness of what's going on so then you know how to respond. For us overthinkers and anxious folks, we love to be like, "Oh, my stomach is hurting because of the donut." Well, let me take out my planner and cross off the fact that I was going to buy donuts tomorrow. And let me say
Yeah.
that tomorrow is going to be a gym day to make up for whatever. Nope,
Yeah. Yeah.
all we're doing is noticing.
Right. Right. Yeah. So as we near our close here, heard this great quote. Um, and I really need to read more about these people. It's interesting because I just heard about. Have you ever heard about Elizabeth Elliot, Jim and Elizabeth Elliot, American
Hmm.
missionaries? So on Saturday we had a speaker come talk to our group at church about evangelism. Um,
Cool.
Stay tuned about that, everybody, actually. But you too, Rachel, we have to talk about this. And he told us about this Jim and Elizabeth Elliot. Okay, that's a side note. They have an amazing story, and I need to learn more about them. But as I was thinking about mindfulness and looking into mindfulness, I found this quote that just so happens to be by this missionary, Jim Elliot. He
Mm.
said, "Wherever you are, be all there." You've probably heard that before. I
Mm.
think it's one that goes
Mm.
around a lot. So wherever you are, be all there. So again, just be
Mm.
present in this moment. Now, he was a Christian missionary. So how did that go into, his work as a missionary? And it was
Mm.
about like embracing the will of God, right? So if the
Mm.
will of God has me here in this moment, like even if I don't understand it, even if there's difficulty, like I'm just going to be all there. And that's like out of obedience, right?
Yeah.
So wherever you are, be all there. And I think that is good for us too, as Christians, missionaries or not. It's just this idea that like sometimes I don't understand my situation most of the time, right? I don't understand what's going on, why this is happening. A lot of us experience this. Why did this setback occur? Why did this thing that I really wanted did not happen? Well, if we can understand that if he put me here, right, if we all believe that God is in control, like there's a reason. So let's pay
Mm.
attention. Let me like be all in, right? As opposed to one foot kind of out of the situation, looking for a way out, right?
Yeah.
Let me be in here, pay attention, live this moment, right? Focus and see what he's trying to teach me in it,
Yeah.
right? And what he's trying to produce in me, what fruit he's trying to produce in me through this moment.
Mm.
So I
I
think
love
if I
that.
had no idea who Jim Elliot was, I would have read the quote and I would have been like, yeah, that's a good mindfulness quote. Wherever you are, be all there, be present, right? Be all
Mm.
in. But when I, thought about his background, I was like, this is pretty powerful from a Christian
Mm.
standpoint, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but also Christian mindfulness, I think, can be a thing. I'm sure it is a thing. Everything is a thing. But I think I don't know if you have any thoughts about that, but I like that. I like that
Yeah.
idea. Just embrace where he has me now. What do I need to get out of it? And I'm just gonna be all in. Sometimes that's
Mm,
extremely difficult. No, I'm not
mm,
saying it's not
mm.
difficult. I speak from experience. It is difficult for me at this very moment, but I'm trying to just be in this season. The Lord, I'm here. I'm listening.
Yeah.
What do you got for me? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's real. That is a really beautiful quote. It makes me think about how when we really trust God, that we are no longer tempted to have one foot in, one foot out, because we're trusting that if God has us in this moment right here, right now, then that's for a reason. So we're not missing out. So there's no
Mm-hmm.
need for my foot to be out.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of us, even if we've been loving the Lord since we were 0 years old, we have a hard time trusting the Lord that He will provide and that we are where He wants us to be and that we can be happy and content where we are. We're still ambitious, we still have goals, but sometimes those things make it difficult for us to appreciate and to be still with God, right? How many times in the Bible has God commanded his people to be still? Be like, yo, just be still and courageous. I'm gonna show up for you. All right. Just sit and listen, and you will hear me and you will feel me, right? And not in a big roaring wind, but in a quiet wind, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this really tells us the practice of really acknowledging that God does align our steps, and therefore we don't have to have FOMO or have a fear that we're missing out of something that's not happening right now. If God wanted
Yeah.
us to have the thing, then we would have the thing, and we can trust in Him to have that.
Yeah.
And it's also difficult to do that because then when we do fully, intentionally, mindfully be in that thing, then we are like absorbing the thoughts and the feelings, right? A lot of us are going through different stressors right now. And so if we were to really acknowledge the stress, we would be thinking and feeling things that we don't really want to feel. And that's
Mm-hmm.
also really difficult. But instead of
Yeah.
shying away from that, this quote is reminding to be like, just be present with your stress. You're not going to be overwhelmed with it, but you can be present with it. And then that can help you to actually feel better. And then once you've processed it, you can figure out what it is you want to do about it. So it's
Yeah.
it's a beautiful, beautiful basic reminder. I'm so happy that you brought that up.
Thanks. Yeah,
Yeah.
if anyone's curious, just Google Jim and Elizabeth Elliot. Great story that I need to read more about for sure.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, I think this has been really, really interesting conversation. I want to try some more of the daily little mindfulness practices so that I am like equipped,
Yeah.
for when the big feelings inevitably come on a daily basis, that I
They come.
can, yeah, they be coming for me on a absolute daily basis. Let me tell you, the struggle is real, folks. The struggle is real. Oh,
Mm,
sometimes this is super side note. As much as I said that I felt this is God right here, this is God's provision, this is God's grace, this is God's help. I have recently felt so unbelievably strongly this is the enemy. This is the enemy attacking
mm,
me, right?
mm,
And
mm.
man, that is another, yeah, that is 100% another episode,
Yeah.
but it's wild. So the big
Yeah.
feelings are coming because all around there's just like stuff. There's just there's just stuff happening. We're human. The world is the
Yeah.
world. It's super broken. So the big feelings always come. So yeah, I'm looking forward to trying some of these, and I'll probably report back. You always hear everything. So but everyone else, let us know if you have any, mindfulness techniques, practices that you really enjoy, or if you're looking forward to trying anything.
Mm,
Um, let us know what you think. We love to hear from you always, and what you want to hear us talk about next. Please let us
yeah.
know. Yeah, you can tell them, Rachel
Yes.
Ann, how to be in touch. Yeah.
Yes. So thanks for tuning in with us, y'all. This was a fun one. We would love to hear from y'all about mindfulness. What does that mean to you? Is that something you practice? Is that easy? Is that hard? Any tips and tricks? Leave it down below in the comments. You can also email us. We're at connectedwellnesspodcast@gmail.com. We're on Instagram at Connected Wellness Podcast. If you want to reach out to Marianne specifically, she's at Wabasaba on Instagram. If you want to reach out to me specifically, specifically, I'm at Real with Rachel Ann on Instagram. If you want to reach out to us on Facebook, we are there too at Connected Wellness Podcast. Shameless plug, if you do need some support with mindfulness, I'm hosting some processing spaces in the next few months. The first one is going to be on December 1st. And in the process space, we just kind of breathe and we do a lot of mindfulness practices as well. So I'll include that link below as well. Hope to see you there. And yeah, those are all of the fun ways. I'll leave it over to Marianne for our goodbye of the episode.
Thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope to see you next time. Until then, be well.
Yes, be well, everybody. Bye.